of loud exhaust pipes. It's not exactly what I pictured for my first trip to the Appalachian Mountains. There are amusement parks down the main strip, Dolly Parton's famous place, Dollywood, a giant Titanic ship hitting a life-sized iceberg. There's a miniature NASCAR racetrack. Into an arcade. And people everywhere, lapping up the summertime vibe. Harleys cruising by, pinball, bright neon signs, with the smell of deep-fried chicken.
Best steakhouse in town, guys. Come on up.
It's all a bit much for a guy who likes a bit of peace and quiet in nature. You know, something a bit more Huckleberry Finn. But to my relief, less than 2 miles from the edge of Gatlinburg, Tennessee, I enter another world. A sign at the roadside says, "Welcome to Great Smoky Mountains National Park." I find myself with a different crowd in the woods. In fact, at a very special spot in the forest. They're here to experience nature's own amusement park. And the whole scene is pretty surreal. I walk past volunteers who are directing people towards the best place for tonight's show.
But just look for a nice open area. Oh yeah, the left side of the trail.
This is Elkmont, and the crowd is here to witness a true marvel of nature, a light show put on by insects, fireflies. But not just any firefly. I'm in the Appalachian habitat of Photinus Carolinas, what's known as a synchronous firefly. They gather just after dark, and all of them flash at the same time, in their thousands. And there is a ton of anticipation in the air. I talk to small groups of families and friends, perched in amongst the trees on camp chairs. What are you expecting?
Lots of lights, we hear.
They're not kidding. Lots of lights.
Once you see this, it ruins lightning bugs wherever you're coming from at home. Like, people will be amazed, oh, the lightning bugs are out, and you're like, that's nothing.
In essence, it's just fascinating, so
yeah,
we just really want to experience it.
Great Smoky Mountains National Park is at the heart of this firefly story for one reason, one that you might not think about much: darkness. The park is an island of darkness in a growing sea of human light that laps right up to its boundaries. And as human development makes the world brighter all across the firefly's range, the light pollution we're causing is threatening the future of these delicate, glowing insects. But this special park provides a vital sanctuary and a glimmer of hope for their survival. From KURW in Seattle and Chris Morgan Wildlife, welcome to the wild. First things first, let's get the biggest controversy about fireflies out of the way.
We called them lightning bugs. We didn't call them fireflies.
What's the difference?
And there's none. It's a regional difference.
This is Lynn Frierson-Faust. She's 70 years old, slightly built, and opinionated.
When I was 38 years old, I started working with northern scientists that came down, and they called them fireflies. And I remember that very first night, they kept talking about fireflies.
You're like, what are they talking about?
And finally I said, are y'all talking about lightning bugs? And, you know, and they go, well, yeah. Of course, they thought I was some redneck idiot hick. But now, because fireflies have become so popular.
It's funny what catches on, isn't it?
Even my grandchildren are calling them fireflies. And it's like,
that's
oh
gotta
my
be
gosh,
painful.
I failed, but then I'm calling them fireflies.
Lynn has a short golden blonde bob, incredible energy, and that southern get-things-done attitude. I love her immediately. And Lynn is as local as it gets where I'm standing here in the hills of Tennessee. We're inside Great Smoky Mountains National Park at a place called Elkmont. Once upon a time, Lynn's family had a cabin right here, but there's nothing left of Elkmont now. All the cabins have been demolished. We'll get to that shortly. It's part of the curious story of these fireflies. I tracked Lynn down because there's no one who knows more about the fireflies in the Great Smoky Mountains than Lynn. Her story and theirs are entangled from the start. Lynn has a very personal story here. To hear her tell it, this was one of the friendliest neighborhoods in the world.
All the people up and down the road, these porches had rocking chairs and swinging porch swings. And up and down the road, everybody would sit on the porch and visit. And then if somebody happened to walk down the road, headed to the swimming hole or something, it's, howdy, neighbor. You know, everybody yelling. Everybody was in everybody's business. But it was really probably what communities ought to be and are not anymore.
How old were you when you spent most of your time here?
Well, from the crib on.
Wow. The cabins were here before the park came in 1940. There were about 70 of them, mostly used for summer retreats in the mountains. They'd been passed down through families for close to 100 years. But there was more to Elkmont than porch swings and southern charm.
My mother-in-law had figured it out years ago that there was something special up here that we didn't have in the valley.
What made Elkmont special was their own mountain secret. Lynn still remembers the first time seeing them with her mother-in-law. It was 1973.
We all had had dinner, and she just suddenly said, she looked at her watch, she said, okay, put the babies to bed. The light show is beginning in 10 minutes. Everybody needs to get ready. She said, we're going to turn the lights off now. And so she wanted everybody to have a chair, and we'd get blankets. A lot of nights, it was kind of chilly up here. And she turned out all the lights, and she'd go, it's going to begin soon. And it was like, what is she talking about?
Lynn's own family cabin was on the upper road at Elkmont. It had street lights and was known as the Party Road. But after she married, she spent more time at the in-laws' cabin. That cabin was down on the lower road, no lights, and closer to the stream. Lynn followed her mother-in-law's orders that chilly evening and got ready. But she still didn't know what was coming. And then, the forest began to sparkle.
The whole hill just started, it was like a waterfall coming down.
Fireflies. And to Lynn's amazement, they were pulsing in perfect harmony. Did the place fall quiet, or did it surprise everybody?
Yeah, and it actually is so peaceful. And they're doing their thing. They don't care that we're watching. They just don't want us to mess up their deal. You know, we are just bystanders in this.
Seeing thousands of bugs in a dark forest flash together in perfect time was a critical experience for Lynn. It would shape the next 50 years of her life. But why was that lower Elkmont Road such a firefly hotspot? Dr. Becky Nichols is a park ranger at Great Smoky Mountains National Park and an entomologist, an insectologist basically, an expert in bugs. She explains why Elkmont is such a great place to view fireflies.
It is in an area with a moist leaf layer. The larval stage lives within the first couple inches of soil, and in that leaf layer.
In the life of a firefly, the spectacular light show is the brief final chapter. Female fireflies lay their eggs on the ground. After 3 weeks, they turn into larvae that bury themselves in the soil, where they spend up to 2 years feeding and growing. The soil is always better for them if there's a river nearby.
And so it's really important for that area to be moist and have a lot of potential food in that layer, because they're predators and they're feeding on earthworms, snails, and other small invertebrates. So if it's too open and it's too hot or dry, they're not going to have that food source available.
A few weeks before the firefly emerges, the larva forms a protective shell called a pupa, a tiny alien-like creature about the size of a baked bean. Inside the pupa, it spends about 20 days turning into the bug that will ascend into the night sky for its mating display. Once in the air, it has just 2 or 3 weeks to breed before it runs out of energy and dies. And it's a delicate business for these fireflies. The soil, the moisture, and the temperature all have to be just right. And there's one other crucial factor that's more important than anything: darkness.
Light pollution is one of the major contributors to firefly decline. Many people will have security lights on, or yard lights, or businesses will have lights on all night.
We're a bright species, aren't we? We like things lit up and safe and secure, and
Yeah.
my goodness, is it frustrating for you, or do you feel that it's a difficult environment that we've created for these lightning bugs?
I think in many ways we have created an environment that they're just not able to carry out their display, their mating behavior.
Mm-hmm.
They're not able to complete that. So that's why numbers have gone down in a lot of different areas.
The light sensitivity varies between different species of fireflies. Some can tolerate more light. The receptors in their eyes have evolved to better filter it out. These are the fireflies that come out at dusk, the ones that you see in suburbs flitting around in your yard. But the fireflies here at Elkmont, the synchronous species, they're nocturnal. They're more sensitive to artificial light and only come out at true dark, long after the sun has set. Fireflies should blanket the south, but this is a fast-growing part of the country. Forests and creeks are making way for new homes and businesses. Almost a sixth of fireflies are in trouble. One species has only 7 acres of habitat left. And even though the park is big, over 500,000 acres, the brightly lit edge of the dark forest is never very far away if you're a firefly.
The habitat available to them has declined a fair amount over the last 10 to 20 years, I would say.
Making dark places even more important than ever.
Right.
Why is it doing well in the park and not so well outside the park?
Well, we don't have any habitat disturbance for the most part, and there's no light pollution out in that area. It's very dark, and the forest floor is intact.
Great Smoky Mountains National Park is not just providing plants, soil and moisture. Part of the habitat here is the vital darkness it provides. It's a rare dark spot on the map. Park Service is working hard to keep it that way by using softer lights that also point downwards. Just outside the park, Lynn has watched the light pollution grow firsthand in places that were rural and dark till pretty recently. 5 houses per acre sit in what used to be an agricultural valley where she lives now.
I'm watching populations blink out that I have followed for 50 years. I mean, it just breaks my heart. So they're very habitat specific. They are susceptible to problems with the soil, chemicals, compaction, moving the dirt around. And if they are unlucky enough to come up where new lights have been installed, they're not going to find their mate. And their lives are so short, it's like 2 to 3 weeks, up, down, and they have that short amount of time to find a mate, and to get the next generation going.
Lynn's life-changing moment on that Elkmont porch all those years ago triggered an unlikely love affair with fireflies. By 2017, she had literally written the book on them. But the journey from a newlywed to a household name in fireflies was long. It all began in earnest in 1991. It was in that year she picked up an issue of Science News.
On the cover of it was a firefly tree in Malaysia, just looks like a Christmas tree, just all lit up. And I looked at it and it said Fireflies in Synchrony or something. And I thought, I bet they'll talk about the Elk moments, because I hadn't gotten to when I realized what we were seeing up here was super special.
She read a line that said, "There are no synchronous fireflies in the Western Hemisphere."
I read that sentence, I thought, well, they're wrong. We have them at Elkmont.
She gets a pushy look on her face and tells me she decided to write a letter to a professor who's mentioned in the article. She even scribbled out the pattern of flashes like a musical score as a way to describe to him what she was seeing. He didn't believe her. He agreed that there were certainly a few fireflies in Tennessee, but none of them, he told her confidently, flashed simultaneously like they do in Asia.
And academia, has their own little world, and they wouldn't believe it when people who live there, farmers, Native Americans, fishermen, campers, were coming back going, the whole forest was pulsating.
Rejected by her first contact with the ivory tower of academia, Lynn turned to the next best place she could think of to find more information. she walked into her local library.
And so the little lady, all libraries have, was there. And so I said, do you have any books on lightning bugs? And she said, oh, yes, follow me. And so we went and down the steps, down deeper and deeper to the children's area, and with the little red chairs and the little tables. And she said, they're kind of small, but you can sit here. She brought me children's books.
The books were great, but let's just say it wasn't the depth of information that Lynn was hoping for. She thought maybe the park rangers at Great Smoky Mountains would know more about their glowing bugs.
They'll know about it.
Yeah.
So I went down there now. This was Elkmont warfare at its highest level.
Elkmont warfare. What she's talking about is her community's fight for its existence. Great Smoky Mountains National Park was now 5 decades old, and time was up on the leases that the grandfathered family cabins had enjoyed since the park was created. Lynn and her neighbors were about to lose their property. Tensions were high. And Lynn's crusade on behalf of the Fireflies had landed right in the middle of the turmoil.
But I went down truly innocent, stupid, and said, do you all know about the Fireflies of Elkmont? And I got our lightning bugs. I said, they all flashed together up there. And I mean, the room just kind of went quiet and they stared at me. And one official said, are you from Elkmont? And so that meant bingo, the big war.
And why would they say, are you from Elkmont, and that be a thing? Why was that?
Because if I was a cabin owner, they were afraid I was looking for a reason to not change the habitat.
Lynn realized they weren't going to believe anything she said. They thought she had ulterior motives.
I said, we've got these lightning bugs at Elkmont that are very different from what we have down in the valley, and you just get the blank look, And one ranger said, I think you're talking about June bugs. Now, June bugs, big old green thing, and we used to put a thread on their leg and let them fly around. I said, no, I'm not talking about June bugs. And I said, could you come up and see them? And because we were still in the cabin, I said, they're out right now if you come up tonight.
The country housewife from Elkmont with her sugary accent and family cabin apparently didn't have the credentials to persuade the park that something extraordinary was living in their woods. But wow, was that all about to change? We'll hear the rest of Lynn's story after the break and find out, how does a firefly actually glow?
This is the Natural History Collection in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. We have about 80,000 specimens in here.
Becky Nichols has walked me into a sterile-looking room. Fluorescent lights flicker overhead. There are multiple rows of large white cabinets full of drawers. Looks a bit like a morgue. But this is ground zero for a special kind of census. Becky and her colleagues are on a multi-year mission to identify all the plants and animals living in the park. They started with about 10,000. They're now up to 22,000, and 1,000 of those are new to science. This little corner of Appalachia is a biodiversity mecca.
We also have a lot of backlog specimens, as you can see up in the front area, that are in process.
I'm here for Becky to explain to me what makes a firefly glow. She unlocks one of the doors and pulls out a tray with well over 200 insects on it, all pinned down and labelled in neat little rows, like something from Charles Darwin's era. Wow, look at that. Oh, that is a dream.
These are the fireflies.
Wow.
They are a type of beetle in the family Lampyridae. And so you can see the labels here showing what family that the following insects are in. And then that's the species we're looking at, Photinus Carolinas.
Photinus Carolinas, the Latin name for the synchronized fireflies at Elkmont. And yes, you heard it right. It's not a fly, it's a beetle.
I can actually show you the light organ on the underside of the firefly.
Oh, wow, you opening up the box.
So you can see on the abdomen of these specimens the light organ on the last two segments.
Insects have three main body parts: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. The head has a tiny brain, the mouth, and some sense organs. The thorax is where the legs and the wings are attached. It's full of muscles and has a healthy supply of oxygen. The rest of the body is the abdomen, segmented into different parts. Fireflies have a light organ towards the abdomen's tail end. This is where they flash.
And what they're doing when they flash is they're combining two chemicals that they have in their abdomen, luciferin and luciferase, which is an enzyme. So the enzyme breaks down luciferin, and as a result, light is produced. And so that happens every time that they flash.
A little miniature chemical reaction going on for each flash.
Mm-hmm.
And the result is the flash of those two
Yes.
compounds coming together.
That's correct.
This chemical reaction is more efficient than even our most advanced light bulb. And it's all for one purpose: to attract a mate. The males flash to impress the females, who are sitting on the ground looking up to see who shines the brightest. And one crucial factor for the fireflies is timing. Timing for the fireflies to emerge from underground at the same time, timing for courtship, and also timing for people to come and watch them. So an important part of Becky's work with fireflies is to predict when they will emerge and start flashing. It's always around the beginning of June, but the park tries to pin it down more precisely so they can manage the influx of visitors.
So predicting when they're going to be at their peak is a bit of a challenge.
I bet.
And so I work closely with Lynn on trying to figure that out. Over the years, she has kept a lot of data on temperatures and when they emerge.
What's the magic recipe? Is there an easy equation you can explain there about when these things come out?
It has to do with the daily maximum and minimum temperatures.
The same Lynn Faust that nobody at the park would listen to years ago worked out a formula. It's based on a trick that Iowa farmers use to plant corn. They're looking for the moment when the soil has collected enough warmth. When that happens, like a pot of water that's started to steam, the fireflies emerge from the ground to put on their show. The number of flashing males starts low and then rises rapidly to a peak before quickly dropping off. Predicting the exact date of the peak each year is part science and part alchemy. And the timing is all down to 2 or 3 days.
I observed the first male emerging about 3 weeks ago. And so they were going strong the first night of our ticketed event, which tells me that we're probably right about peak or close to peak then, which is a little bit off center from where I wanted it to be.
Earlier?
I try to get the peak right in the middle of that 8-day time frame. So it might have been shifted a little bit, but I think we're going to have enough of a display by June 10th, the last day, to keep all the visitors satisfied.
I'm relieved to hear it. My producer Matt and I have come a long way to see these half-inch performers. It would be a bummer to miss them. Becky and Lynn each monitor temperatures separately, and then they come together to compare notes. Lynn, in other words, is the expert that the busiest national park in the nation leans on to predict the most important event on their calendar, firefly season. But getting the park to trust her took more than impressing them with a trick she'd picked up from some Iowa farmers. Lynn had been building her firefly CV for a while. Remember the professor who thought synchronous fireflies only lived in Asia? His name is Dr. John Copeland. After a few letters back and forth back in the 90s, Lynn managed to persuade him to come to see the spectacle she'd been describing for himself.
So he came up, he was very skeptical.
Professor Copeland was dressed in his London fog jacket and Oxford shoes, and Lynn prayed she wasn't about to make a fool of herself as they hit the trail through the woods that warm June evening.
So we stood there in the dark, and his arms were folded, and I was sweating. I thought, what if they're not here? What if he doesn't think it's pretty? And, and all the what ifs. And we stood there, and they start at 9:30, roughly. But I didn't know that then. I just knew they start at dark. And so 33 years later, I can tell you give me a night in June, and I can tell you the minute it will start, but I couldn't do that then. And so we just stood there, and I was sweating, and the longer he stood there with his arms folded, the more I knew nothing is going to start flashing.
But one by one, a flash here, a flash there, the light show started to build. Soon, all the fireflies were flashing in beautiful synchrony.
He just starts going, there's millions and millions, there's millions. And he just kept saying that. And there weren't millions, but there was a whole lot. The sensation is you're seeing a whole lot.
Wow.
And it's pulsating.
In that moment, everything changed between the professor and the firefly lady. John and Lynn started a long-term research project. They met up every summer, along with John Copeland's fellow professor, Andy Moiseff. And together they would count bugs and learn what they could about this unknown species, the first North American firefly species to show synchronized flashing behavior. It was a busy time for Lynn.
I had 3 little kids. We had Little League going on, Scouts going on, vacation Bible school teacher. I had all this stuff in my real life, and I luckily had more energy then, and I could drive at night a lot better. I would do all of that, get everybody fed, then my husband would put them to bed. I'd get in the car, drive up here, arrive here about 9 o'clock, work with them till 2 in the morning, get back in the car, and go home. I mean, it was stupid. But I actually did that for a number of years.
Lynn and the 2 men analyzed the flashes, even the mathematics behind how regular they are. The pulsing lights seemed orchestrated and timed. One of them referred to the synchrony as the flip side of chaos. The trio started to publish in scholarly journals, proving what Lynn had known all along. And after years of giving Lynn the cold shoulder, a park ranger finally came up to see what was happening at Elkmont.
We were all kind of nervous suddenly because Andy and John were there by then, so it looked more official. It was no longer the little woman from Elkmont. But suddenly around 9:30, it started, and the ranger goes, "Oh my God, oh my God." And I bet he said that 5 times. That's all he said. Just, "Oh my God, oh, whoa." And the next night was our famous night we called the Night of Baby Rangers. And the next night, there were like 30 park people up to see it. So that guy had gone back and said, "Oh, there really is something up there." But
how did it feel when you suddenly saw everybody seeing what you'd been talking about?
It was sort of nice, I have to say.
Sort of nice must be an understatement.
Yeah, and I had no idea what it was going to turn into.
My conversation with Lynn has me very excited to actually see these famous fireflies. And my fingers are crossed she and Becky got the timing right. How's it looking tonight?
I'm told it should be pretty good tonight.
It's 7:30 in the evening, and I drive through the tall hemlock and maple trees up the winding road to Elkmont. It's now closed in firefly season, except if you have a pass.
Oh, you're VIP people.
Yeah.
Go right ahead, honey.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. It's 2 hours before dark, but the parking lot is already full. Kids, grandmas, groups of college friends, people bustling everywhere, unloading coolers and chairs from their car trunks.
Let's go see some fireflies.
Lynn and I walk down a gravel path that leads into the forest. There's a rocky river on one side and a treed slope on the other.
When I said you usually hear the river where you see the Carolinas, this is what I meant. There's usually always water in the background.
Oh, interesting.
They're not really flying particularly along the river, but you hear the river.
We are praying that we're still here on a peak night. It's now about 9:20 and getting dark. Lynn says on peak nights, the fireflies might start their display a bit earlier than 9:30. Maybe the flashing males are trying to avoid competition for the females. My eyes are glued to the hillside.
Oh, this is a nice dark place in here.
Look, there's one.
Oh,
See?
there's. Okay,
Yeah.
look at him go now.
Yeah.
Oh, yes!
In the fading light, I spot just 3 or 4 fireflies as they begin their distinct synchronous flashing pattern. It's magical to watch my first glimpses. We have no fireflies where I'm from, and I'm already mesmerized. There are about 2,000 species of fireflies in the world, and each one has a different flash pattern. The one in front of me, Photinus Carolinas, is one of the few that sync up. Their flash pattern is 6 flashes in a row, followed by 6 seconds of not flashing. The best way to verify you're seeing the correct species is by counting each flash.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is the flash rate.
And they're starting.
What time do you got?
It's 3 minutes till 9:30 if my watch.
Okay, right, they're 3 minutes early. Look at that.
3 minutes early, a good sign that we're probably still at this summer's peak.
Oh my goodness, see how they are lighting up the ground. And then it all goes dark. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they're dark. Totally dark. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then dark. Oh, that is insane. I love nature so much.
The slope we're watching slowly comes alive with lights. It's almost hypnotic to watch this flash pattern repeat itself over and over again. 6 flashes, and then darkness.
And they're each going with their closest neighbors, and that's how they sync up.
Each firefly takes a couple of seconds to charge up its chemical batteries. But if it has the juice, the instant it sees its neighbor flash, it will copy it. So after 20 or 30 seconds, they're all in rhythm. The fireflies further downhill have their view blocked by the vegetation, so it takes them an extra half second to light up, and this creates a cascading waterfall where the light seems to pour downhill. I'm in awe. After all that time underground, the fireflies have only a brief window to mate. The males are flashing their hearts out.
Kind of like a teenage boy with a hot rod. You know, whoever flashes the brightest and the most might get the girl. But the girl has quite a bit of power.
She has the power of choice. The females stay on the ground, sitting in the doff on the forest floor, watching, observing the display, looking for a worthy male. Once she spots him, she has her own flash response.
It's a doublet, we call it, just real quick, like that.
Yeah.
And she's aiming it, so it's really hard to find females. She aims it to a particular male, and it's much dimmer than this, and hopefully he sees her. But we think that's the function of their dark period. They want to see her. There's too much visual clutter when they're all flashing.
The entire thing is a Morse code of love. The female points her double flash at a specific male she likes, but there are lots of eyes on her. Lynn tells me sometimes 50 males descend on her to try and mate. But they have to be careful. There's a different species of firefly here, and they are on the hunt. The sneaky predator studies the female's flash pattern and copies it. When a male arrives looking for love, the predator pounces, sucking his blood and devouring his insides. That's not all the trickery on display. The first male to land on the female often gets rejected. He then walks off and switches to the female flash pattern, luring some of the other males away, like he's acting out of spite.
So it's all such deception and mimicry. So it's not all love in the world of fireflies.
We watch for 3 mesmerizing hours as the courting insects do their dance. 6 flashes in a row, about 8 seconds of darkness, 6 flashes, darkness, flashes, darkness.
Amazing. I'm going to have such good dreams tonight.
Oh, good, good.
It truly is one of the most dazzling displays in nature I've ever experienced. But the journey of this species from an unknown bug to a booming celebrity has come with costs. It's also left some complicated feelings for Lynn. The secret of the synchronous fireflies Lynn learned from her mother-in-law all those years ago was out. Her books and articles had been noticed. She was consulting on David Attenborough nature films. More and more people were coming to see the mating display each June.
There were nights, I think as many as 10,000 people were up here. It was nuts. People had gotten to where parking was so hard. I mean, it got wild. People are creative. This would be in the 90s and early 2000s. People would rent limos, you know, like those really long stretch limos. So they would have a party and drive up to see the lightning bugs.
The school buses and limos would get stuck on the narrow gravel roads. Wrecking crews would have to come up and haul them out. It turned into chaos. And everywhere, Lynn saw evidence of the damage caused by the crowds. Photinus Carolinas glows for about an hour or so after death, as the chemical reaction continues in their abdomen. Lynn would see the luminescent bodies of crushed fireflies dotting the ground.
It was just like a zoo. They didn't ask for it. I didn't ask for it. It just happened.
It got so bad in the early 2000s that the park had to step in. It was part of Becky Nichols' job to work out how to manage the crowds.
So I first observed them in 2001, probably. Since then, it has just exponentially increased the number of people that have gone out there. And so we felt it was pretty important to protect the resource and to provide safety for visitors that we closed the area down.
Things had to change, and it came in the form of a lottery. People from all over the world buy a lottery ticket on the Park Service website, and some of them get lucky. The park issues 120 parking passes for each night of the 8-day peak. No more than 7 people per car. Visitors have to stay on the trails, and another important rule is to cover their flashlights with a small sheet of red film to avoid creating their own light pollution. This evening, the lottery winners are so excited. The atmosphere is electric. Really, like they'd won a big cash lottery. Folding chairs, all facing toward the hillside, like Mother Nature's movie theater.
This is the love spot. That's where we're hoping. This is where, like, the firefly action is happening.
Mother Nature at its greatest, right? I mean, it's just awesome to watch. It's like a show.
It's like a magic show.
But it's an amazing thing, seeing this whole crowd of human beings arrive here for one thing in nature, this spectacle of these fireflies, and I just love it. I can't wipe the smile off my face.
And the most surprising thing, I was expecting whooping and hollering. But when that wave of fireflies illuminates the inky black forest, the crowd falls completely silent. A deep hush fills the forest. The park is working hard to manage the spectacle, but it's a tricky balance.
There's a chance they could be loved to death, these insects.
That's true, yeah. So during the event, we have a lot of staff on site to make sure that people stay on the main trail. So we're pretty adamant about people using red light.
Lynn tells me she believes the park is doing a good job. It looks like things are going as well as could be hoped. The lottery system seems to be working. The lucky winners watch in silent awe, drawn to the light.
You are like the female firefly.
I'm not eating everyone. I'm the good one. Yeah, I'm not the predatory one.
It's amazing. You flashed your light and everybody has descended on you and this place.
It's what it feels like.
For the most part, Lynn is happy about that. She loves the look on a person's face when they see the flash pattern for the first time.
This is sort of pure joy for the human. We're just lucky that we find it so beautiful to see lights in the dark. And it affects almost everybody the same way, and it's positive.
But it's not all positive feelings for Lynn. Having all these people at Elkmont is a bit of a challenge too. This used to be her family's special place.
And so this was our cabin. This was Spring Cottage.
Yeah.
Lynn has taken me to a very poignant spot for her, the site of her former family cabin. All that's left now is the old River Rock chimney. We clamber through overgrown bushes and under a fallen tree to sit down.
This was actually the front porch. I mean, we'd cram a lot of people in here every weekend.
Beautiful old River Rock chimney.
She points out a group of Firefly tourists camped out under a tree her father-in-law planted. The cabin owners at Elkmont were forced to give up a lot, and the months leading up to the repossession had been very painful.
It was like if you've ever had a loved one slowly dying, and we knew it. And it's like, okay, that's one less night we have up here. It's one less night.
It was a battle they couldn't win.
Your family was here and using this cabin and spending time in this place until you were how old?
Well, always, till December 1992, and the park came armed and escorted everybody out. And that was the end.
The cabins were left to slowly fall apart. Destruction by neglect was how Lynn put it. Eventually, they were in such bad condition that the Park Service bulldozed them. Lynn said she was lucky to be out of the country when it happened. She got a text from a friend that simply said, "It's gone."
And our youngest child was 5 when we left, Ted. And when he was 8, so 3 years after we had all left and Elkmont was gone, and so our lives changed, because that's usually where we were all summer. One night he was saying that we were saying in prayers with him, and he looked up, he said, "Mom, I am so sorry." I said, "What are you sorry about?" He said, "I'm trying to remember, but I'm forgetting Elkmont." And I said, "It's okay, just remember what you can." And, we have pictures and all that. But he was aware that he was forgetting and that it had been such a neat place.
Lynn looks around. The cabins being gone, the crowds of people pouring into her Firefly heaven. I can tell this is an emotional spot for her. It's bittersweet.
I'm of two minds. I've sat in the forest and cried many times, like, oh my gosh, particularly when I see those shining, smeared couples, that were stepped on. I just thought, I'm responsible for this. Why did I say anything? But you had to say something. It was something beautiful. It was something we had enjoyed. We were leaving it. And, I mean, that's not my personality to keep it quiet.
Do you have regrets?
Yeah, part of it I regret, but I think it was going to be known anyway.
As the night gets late, the unsuccessful male fireflies start making their way up to the treetops. They're headed up to rest. It's beautiful to watch as their flashes diminish and they slowly float up higher and higher towards the stars until they blink out for the night.
Like, okay, guys, I'm leaving, and they're waving, and they just go up, and then they go out. It's sort of sad. They finally, you just don't see it again. So they must land and...
Why do you call it sad?
Well, they're leaving for the night.
Yeah.
It's over, and they weren't successful.
But they can try again tomorrow in the darkness of their forest home, thanks to the park and the devotion of Lynn and now countless volunteers and helpers. And they'll be next year for another generation of fireflies and lucky lottery winners. The more we can do outside of the park to protect habitat and to hold on to the vital resource of darkness, the more fireflies will be able to light up our dreams. The ones I've seen tonight in Great Smoky Mountains National Park are just one of over 400,000 beetle species around the world. But the synchrony of this beetle holds an important lesson about the flip side of chaos.
Synchrony is in us, but we can also all fall apart.
Oh, we need to tap into the synchrony of human beings more. That's the savior right there.
And singing, I think it's why singing is so important.
Right.
And choral singing. does something to your brain. When everybody's doing the same thing, it etches it faster. It's in us, I think, synchrony.
Even laughing at the same things.
Yeah.
Maybe we can learn something from the Fireflies about synchrony.
That's right.
And working
Because
together and harmonious.
Right.
Until
Yeah.
it comes to mating, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it gets pretty chaotic there at the end.
Chaos turning to synchrony. Darkness into light. These are the forces that shape our world. It's something nature figured out a long time ago. And at places like Elkmont, she seems more than happy to show us what she knows. This season of The Wild is about the incredible biodiversity in our national parks, from the tallest trees on the planet to the driest deserts and everything in between. And it's about the people working in and around our national parks to protect the natural world while we still can. As always, there are some great photographs and clips from our journey through the national parks on Instagram at The Wild Pod and at Chris Morgan Wildlife. The Wild is a production of KUOW in Seattle and Chris Morgan Wildlife, with support from Wildlife Media. This show would not be possible without listener support. You can help us continue to create this special, immersive storytelling by donating to KUOW. Go to kuow.org/donate/thewild. Thank you. Our producer is Matt Martin. Writing for this episode by Christopher Preston. Jim Gates is our editor. It's hosted, produced, and written by me, Chris Morgan. A very special thank you for their kind financial support to Jill and Scott Walker, Rose Letwin, Ellen Ferguson, Anna Kimball, John Taylor, Paul Lister, Bob Yellerlees, Barbara Stallman, and Barton Brooks. Our production team includes Roy Campanella III, April Craig, Marshall Eisen, Michaela Giannotti-Boyle, Tatiana Latre, Kara McDermott, Lucy Suchek, Amelia Peacock, Darcy Riggins-Schmidt, Brendan Sweeney, and Hans Twite. Our theme music is by Michael Parker. I'm Chris Morgan. Take good care of yourselves and each other. And thanks so much for listening.